Hello guys. Welcome to another gaming edition of Mind-Blowing Facts. In this video, we will look at more interesting facts about popular video games. But before I start, all information in this video is collected from the fact site. So, let's start. Number 1. The Colossi and Shadow of the Colossus don't actually have names. Well, that's not entirely correct, all of the Colossi have names, but these names are unofficial nicknames that the game developers and fans gave them over time. For example, the first Colossus you meet was nicknamed by the developers as Minotaur, while fans gave it the much more exciting nickname of Valus. There are only 16 characters in the entire game that you can fight, and they're all the boss fight level Colossi. Number 2. The first playable demo of StarCraft was essentially a reskinned version of Warcraft, but in space. In fact, it was literally referred to by its own studio as Orcs in Space, as it was meant to be a rush job game that would capitalize on the huge success of Warcraft. Coming from such an uninspired background, it's no wonder that Blizzard was faced with huge criticism over their demo. The team behind StarCraft had some shakeups, and it was decided to essentially redo the entire game. Number 3. The two characters who fight during the intro to Street Fighter II actually have names. For decades after Street Fighter II's release, players wondered who the two mysterious characters seen during the intro were. The fighters were finally identified by Capcom in 2016 and Street Fighter V's release, although still not as playable characters. It turns out that they are Scott, who likes going to the lake but dislikes caterpillars, and Max, who likes sparkly things and gambling. Number 4. Command & Conquer: Red Alert was one of the first video games to be banned in China. As a game which in essence allows you to battle your army against communist armies, it's not exactly the kind of thing that China would have wanted going around. Someone tipped the Chinese government off about this, so they banned Red Alert and its subsequent sequels. Other Command & Conquer games, ones that didn't focus on the total annihilation of communism, have been legally sold in China over the years with no issues. Number 5. Assassin's Creed was initially meant to be a spin-off of Prince of Persia. Back in 2003, Prince of Persia: Sands of Time was all the rage. Ubisoft, the studio behind it, tasked its developers with creating a game that would completely redefine the genre and use the full power of the next generation of video game consoles. The studio originally pitched the game they came up with as Prince of Persia: Assassins. However, as they got to building the game, they found themselves creating an entirely new beast and soon realized that it would have to be a completely different game. Number 6. Snoop Dogg created an exclusive track for Need for Speed Underground 2. But wait, there's more. Snoop Dogg worked with the surviving members of The Doors to create a new remix of Riders on the Storm. They also included many parts of the original recording by The Doors, including samples of Jim Morrison's voice. Number 7. The same guy behind Dota created League of Legends. Steve Gunsu first created Defense of the Ancients, Dota, as a mod for Warcraft 3 back before it became a game in and of itself. Feek was later snapped up by Riot Games, who wanted him to be the brains behind their new operation, League of Legends. Feek's influence on the games can be seen in a number of items and characters, such as Gunsu's Scythe of Vice in Dota and Gunsu's Rageblade in League of Legends. Number 8. If you click the units enough times in Warcraft 3, they will get annoyed at you and start talking back. Warcraft 3 was undoubtedly one of the best strategy games ever to exist, and its features like this really made it just that little bit more special. For example, if you click a peasant too many times, it may start sassing you or even shout, "Help! Help! I'm being repressed." A direct reference to Monty Python's The Holy Grail. Number 9. Donkey Kong 64's DKR app started as a joke between the game designers. And let's be quite honest here, the DKR app itself is a little bit of a joke, but not in a good sense.
Here we go. Performing for you. If you know the words, you can join in too. Put your hands together if you wanna clap. As we take you through this monkey rap.
When it was written and recorded, the DKR app was just a fun little track where monkeys rapped about grapes and bananas, and it was never really meant to be anything more serious than that. Number 10. Dogmeat, the canine companion in Fallout 3, was modeled off the dog in Mad Max 2. In the second Mad Max film, Mel Gibson's Max can be seen roaming the empty wasteland in the company of an Australian cattle dog. The developers of Fallout were obviously fans of the Mad Max films, as the playable character in Fallout 3 resembled Max in many ways. Dogmeat is named after the dog in the not-so-smash hit 1975 post-apocalyptic film A Boy and His Dog. Number 11. Nintendo's American branch was forced to offer gloves to everyone who bought a copy of Mario Party. There's just one game in mind when it comes to the destruction of Nintendo 64 controllers and messed up palms, and that's Mario Party. While no severe injuries ever occurred, more than 90 official complaints were lodged to the New York State Attorney's Office against Nintendo of America for wounds to the hands. Nintendo of America eventually caved and settled the lawsuit, offering 4 sets of fingerless gloves to each household that owned the game. Number 12. Mass Effect was initially called Science Fiction X, or SFX. It was the code name given for Mass Effect while it was going through development. When it came time to give the game a name, many pushed for either Science Fiction X or SFX, not realizing they were too close to the game, and that would have been a truly awful name. Fortunately for everyone, the game ended up being named after one of the most powerful things in the game universe, the energy used to power much of the game's technology. Number 13. Leonard Nimoy from Star Trek voiced much of Sid Meier's Civilization 4. Back in 2005, when players first booted up Civilization IV and researched their first technology, they couldn't believe the voice they were hearing. It was, of course, none other than the voice of Spock from Star Trek, calmly yet firmly narrating the purposes of all available technologies. Number 14. At its release, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate was the largest crossover game in history. It's pretty likely that no game will ever dare to attempt what Nintendo did, considering it took them some 20 years to get there. Players of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate are not just able to take control of every single character that's ever graced the previous Super Smash games, but a whole host more from other game franchises. There are more than 80 playable characters in total, including Banjo and Kazooie and Sephiroth from Final Fantasy, from rival platforms. Number 15. Japan was rumored to have run out of 100 yen coins when Space Invaders was first released in 1978. While this was never proven, it's not surprising, considering that in its first year, it grossed more than $600 million in Japan alone. By 1981, the instant classic had raked in $1 billion from players at arcades around the world. Another fun fact is that Space Invaders was the first video game to have a high score record. Number 16. The Pinkerton Detective Agency tried to sue Rockstar Games after the release of Red Dead Redemption 2. First of all, yes, they actually were a real detective agency back in America's Wild West days. It's not known whether they were as villainous as they were made out to be in Red Dead Redemption 2, but the detective agency's parent company seems not to think so. They sued Rockstar Games over the insidious way they were portrayed, but eventually dropped the lawsuit and settled the issue privately. Number 17. The handbook for Super Mario Kart actually recommended players cheat and look at each other's screens to get an advantage. This was, of course, back in the day of big chunky CRT televisions, so it was pretty much impossible not to see what the other player was doing. That said, the concept of screen cheating has been outlawed by gamers ever since multiplayer games were first created. I think that Nintendo must have just accepted the fact that players would see what their friends were doing and devilishly decided to encourage such heinous acts. Number 18. There are more than 17 million different usable weapons in Borderlands 2. This is an absolutely insane number, and it's features like this that draw people back to the Borderlands series time and time again. Number 19. The Sims was originally meant to be an architecture simulator. The Sims was first placed into the game so that players could see how the houses they created would actually function. After that, however, the developers realized that the Sims themselves were far more interesting than a simple architecture simulator. For better or worse, the game's focus was ultimately pointed entirely towards the funny-sounding people who managed to burn their houses down more often than not. Number 20. When Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was released in the US, the English translation of the manual oversimplified the game's story. I'm not exactly sure why, but the English manual simply claimed that the events of Sonic 2 happened on the same island as the previous game, when he really just flew his plane to a new island and continued running around. The story of the second playable character, Tails, was also altered to claim that he had always looked up to Sonic since he was a cub, while in the game, he only just meets him for the first time when Sonic lands on his island, where the game takes place. Whatever the reasons, the discrepancies in the game universe's lore were cleared up in 1999 with the release of Sonic Adventure on Dreamcast. Number 21. Pac-Man was nearly sold in the US as Puck-Man. At the last minute, it was changed to Pac-Man, as there were fears that teenagers would scratch off a part of the P, turning it into an F. Turning a relatively innocent name into something very offensive. Some claim that the name Puck-Man was initially chosen for international audiences due to his similar shape to a hockey puck. However, the reality is that it is similar in sound to Paku Paku, which means chomp chomp in Japanese. Number 22. The first Battlefield game was created by 14 people. These days video games have teams of thousands of people working on them, but back in 2002, when Battlefield 1942 was released, that was far from the case. Despite having such a small team behind the game, Battlefield 1942 is remembered by many fans of the series to be the best, even if it was a much simpler game than the modern iterations. Another fun fact is, the developers of Battlefield 1942 originally pitched the game to Nintendo as a GameCube exclusive, but Nintendo turned them down as they had no plans at the time to have online play. Number 23. Carrie Fisher, as in the one and only Princess Leia, voiced parts of Dishonored. In a surprising move considering Fisher's fame, Bethesda Softworks decided to hide her voice away as a sort of Easter egg. The main city in Dishonored, Dunwall, has speakers all around the city blaring out constant warnings, propaganda, and so on. If you happen to kill the person who normally makes these announcements, a character voiced by Carrie Fisher steps in and makes the announcements instead. Number 24. There was a movie adaptation of Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time, but it's so awful that you really should just forget it ever existed. Adaptations of video games rarely live up to the hype surrounding them, which is, unfortunately, the case with this terribly whitewashed, not a single Middle Eastern actor, film vaguely set in an alternate reality medieval Iran. What's even more unfortunate is that it tarnished the name of one of the best games of the early 2000s. Number 25. Hideo Kojima used Lego bricks to help his team build Metal Gear Solid. When Metal Gear Solid was released in 1998, it changed the world of video games forever. At the time, developing games in 3D was a relatively new concept, and the team behind the game found it difficult to imagine how the camera angles would work. A unique solution they came up with was to first create the various game levels out of Lego bricks and then film them, which allowed the developers to create more realistic perspectives. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe my channel. Also press the notification bell to be the first one to watch fun and cool videos like this. Thanks for watching, and bye.